But I do think it is a good topic, especially because we are film lovers. We love this medium, and
Yeah,
there are things that it's not that we don't want to see change, but we want to see good change when change is necessary, right?
yeah,
And I think a lot of this comes down to us recognizing that the movie business will always be a business. That side of it will never
yeah,
go away. But there's a difference between the business of it all versus the commercialization of it all.
yeah,
And I feel like it's veering dangerously close to that second category nowadays.
yeah.
And that's a
Mhm.
scary thing, especially for those of us that, relish in not just the classics, but the preservation of those classics or those forgotten films.
Yeah,
Also, the respect, the reverence, and the importance that we always talk about with regard to, you can see a little bit of it back here, physical media, right?
yeah.
And the always evolving business as it is, it's made people forget about physical media, but it also makes people
Mhm.
realize that what they think they always have access to, they actually don't have access to. And it
Yeah.
becomes a completely different conversation, especially when Turner Classic Movies enters the conversation in such a way that it is. It's a really saddening topic.
I agree, and I guess we can certainly start there because the
Mhm.
TCM news was distressing, and you make a good point about the preservation of cinema.
Yeah.
Historically speaking, and while we're talking in the context of film, this idea certainly tethers itself much more broadly speaking, but
Mhm.
when you erase history, bad things tend to happen.
Yeah.
Now, in the context of film, what does that mean? The stakes aren't nearly as high as it is in other areas of life.
No, it's
However,
true. It's important to us though, and it's important to a lot of people. That's
yes,
the
and
thing.
here's the thing: like I and you and probably everybody watching, listening to this, you're if you're watching, listening to this, you're a fan of movies in some way, shape, or form, and
Absolutely.
so you're a fan of art, and the preservation of art. I do think is extremely important, not just film, but all types of art.
Yeah.
And TCM is one of those vital entities that is wholly dedicated to that. Them, Criterion, certainly a few
Mhm.
others as well.
Yeah.
And having them around to help preserve history and film and everything that's preceded. And you think about how film has infiltrated the zeitgeist throughout the last, century or so, how it's influenced pop culture.
Yep.
Movies are such a foundational element, I feel like, of United States culture. Anyway, I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
speak for other countries, but here certainly is. And so having something like TCM around is crucial, especially in the world of streaming. And this is
Mhm.
perhaps where all of these areas or all of these, different arms of film that we're going to be talking about in this conversation, that it's kind of where they start to blur a little bit because
Yeah.
in the world of streaming and digital media, physical media is harder and harder to find.
Yeah.
And that means the preservation of cinema becomes much more challenging.
Absolutely.
And so having the folks at TCM Criterion, like, we might not think about it on a day to day basis. And certainly these executives don't think about it at all.
No, no.
But removing them, I think, is a major step backwards.
I
And
Yeah.
hopefully this can be remedied.
I agree. I agree because we can't only rely on word of mouth to keep that preservation alive, right? Otherwise,
Yeah.
many things are gonna need to change. Like film studies in high school and universities in particular are gonna have to be strengthened or some, way, and I feel like that's gonna be another conversation that we don't even wanna have here because that requires different forms of funding and all this other stuff to go into the education system to keep that preservation in that specific capacity. But
Yeah.
I think another thing is that if if something like TCM were to go away, God forbid it doesn't, but if it were, then I think that means the state of film criticism also needs to change, right? And we talk about this a lot. This could even be its own side topic, but we sometimes sense that the state of film criticism, at least as it relates to social media and film Twitter, has kind of, I guess, devolved is the right way to put it, because it becomes kind of a game. It becomes kind of this like this play for attention and for getting the first word of mouth first.
Mhm.
And I think honestly, and this is not a knock on any certain critics group or anything like that, but if we want to keep the preservation of these classic films alive, and these companies and these streaming platforms are not going to acknowledge that, then I think modern film critics such as ourselves are going to need to reevaluate the way that we continue to talk about films in order to keep that
Mhm.
conversation going, not just for our listeners, but
Yeah.
just in a general sense too. So things would have to change, unfortunately.
I agree, and in addition to perhaps the social media element of it, or the educational part of it, as you're kind of alluding to there as well,
Yeah,
I think one thing that would also help is these streamers, because I don't think they're going away anytime soon.
I agree.
One thing that they need to do, and we briefly talked about this maybe last week on the show, or maybe this was a conversation we had offline. I can't really recall, but one thing that these streamers need to do a better job of is making these older films, these classic films, more accessible in
Mhm.
terms of search and getting it in front of people.
Yeah,
Because
have its own
something like,
category or something like
yeah, because, Amazon Prime or Max itself, they have a lot of really great classic movies, or just anything pre 1990.
yeah, yeah,
But it's hard to find. They're really hard to find, and
yeah.
unless you're a cinephile like us and you're searching these things, and then your algorithm starts to
W
manifest
you
around
just
that.
you just said the word I was gonna say, because my first thought could have been, is that an algorithm thing? Like, is it only really recognizing that user's particular patterns and their usage habits? And in some cases it is, but, I mean, when you first go on to, let's say, Max for the first time, like you've just first initiated your account and you're on there for the first time, the first things you see are movies and television programs that came out in the last 6 months or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
it's all new stuff.
And those home pages, regardless of what your habits are, they tend to always be geared towards the present. And
Hmm.
it's not
Yeah,
like Netflix, at least Netflix, I'll at least give some credit to that. If you scroll enough, you'll find its own row of like classic blockbusters or classic romances or something like that. And a lot of times it might reconfigure itself based on what your habits are, but that doesn't always happen. In fact, I'd
no.
say more than half the time it does not happen.
Well, and the thing with Netflix, I feel like their algorithm panders similarly, in the sense that you have
Yeah.
to search for these things, but also the depth of their catalog is one of the weakest comparatively to all
Yeah.
of these others.
True.
Like
Maybe
I
that's why
don't.
it's easier to find, because there's less stuff, so
Yeah,
they're more easily categorized, in
yeah.
that sense.
I don't know. Maybe I'm being facetious here, but maybe not. Like I don't know if they have anything pre 1985. Like they just.
Netflix specifically? Let me think
Yeah.
about that.
I mean, and again, I'm being perhaps a
I know
little
I know I saw
facetious
Out
there,
of
but
Africa on there the other day, so, I mean, I think that is
okay.
1985 if I'm not mistaken, so I guess that meets your threshold.
But, comparatively to Max or Amazon Prime and others, they that have such a deeper catalog, but regardless, it like these movies are extremely difficult to find. So in terms of preservation, like like what Warner Brother, like the executives at Warner Brothers, one thing that could maybe help them with their sense of history in terms of the decisions they're going to make is if these classic movies get more play because they're in front of eyeballs.
Yeah.
But when they're hidden and they're not getting plays, all they look at a sheet of paper and go,
They're
nobody's watching
they're
this film
looking at
from
it
1947, so why do we have it on here?
they're looking at it as a data analyst would, which is a
Yeah.
job that you need in any type of business, even like this. But there needs to be a counterbalance there, right? It's like in
Mhm.
any business, you can have someone running the numbers and looking what makes sense financially, but then where's the marketing person who knows the customer base, right?
Yeah.
To kind of find that compromise. And that element there that we feel is so important on that creative, from that creative point of view, rather. That's what's missing here, unfortunately. And
Mhm.
it just seems so numerically superficial.
I agree. I agree, and I don't know if that's what's driving the decision around TCM,
Yeah, I
but
don't know.
my guess is the numbers. Well, I mean, Warner Brothers is. I mean, they're cutting back drastically all
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
But when movies that relate to the Turner Classic brand, when they're not getting nearly as much play because they're really hard to find,
Mhm.
you know,
Makes
it
it sound
just
like an
seems.
agenda or something.
Yeah,
It's
well,
like
it becomes like the decisions are myopically driven. You
yeah,
know,
it's not like it's not the classic movie's fault, right?
no,
And that's the problem. It's the way it's categorized and how easy it is to find. So it's like Warner Brothers trying to make a correction for their own mistakes for not giving certain channel
yeah,
outlets equal weight, right?
yeah.
And that's the unfortunate reality there.
And it's also not like they're marketing TCM. I mean, forget the
No,
movies themselves, but TCM as a brand, is there any money put behind them at all?
probably not.
Probably
And
not, right?
it's unfortunate because they have a lot. Max specifically has a lot of great classic film content on there. I mean, at least I think every single Charlie Chaplin film is on Max right now.
Yeah.
At least most of them. All of his full length feature films, I think that he has directed are on there, if I'm not mistaken. But My Fiance Maris and I just watched The Circus the other night. Like
Mhm.
it's the stuff is there, and it's the Criterion transfer, so it's a
Yeah.
good transfer on Max. But man, you have to dig for that. It's just
You do.
annoying.
Maybe the best outcome here, and this is a little bit of a tricky idea because I'm conflating two very different things.
Hmm.
But if preservation is the game here, maybe Warner Brothers could sell, if they're selling their music catalog, maybe they can sell their classic catalog to something like Criterion. Not
Yeah,
that every single one of those movies would be quote unquote Criterion qualified, but Criterion as a brand has more than proven themselves as these stewards of film preservation and film
yeah,
history.
yeah.
So even if the film, not all the films would qualify for a Criterion release per se,
Right.
but handing the reins of the TCM brand to Criterion, maybe that's the play here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how that would work.
I
I
don't know
mean,
how that would work
yeah, because
either.
that
I'm
would
just,
probably that would
yeah,
come down to a lot of negotiating, a lot of transfer of maybe certain rights that certain films hold. I don't really know. I feel like there's a lot of
mhm,
moving pieces there, but in a
yeah,
broad, from a broad point of view, I could see your point.
yeah.
Like
I'm just thinking out
at
loud, but
least a way that's you could
yeah.
transfer ownership of something so that it just doesn't fully go away. And that's
Exactly. And
what we're
that's the
worried
thing
about.
here. Yeah, I just don't want those movies to disappear.
Yeah.
And if Warner Brothers isn't going to care, then give them to somebody that is going to care.
Yeah.
It's like every year I beg the Academy to let me and a few of our colleagues vote for Best Original Score because the Academy doesn't care, but I do. Like that's a category
Well,
I want to take care of.
yeah, apparently they also don't care about animated film all that much either when they think a movie like Song of the Sea is some Chinese film or something like
Yeah.
that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I
With
have no
that,
idea if that quote was accurate or not, but I mean, we heard that back in the day when Song of the Sea was up for best
yeah,
animated film the
yeah,
year
that
it
was one of
came
those
out.
anonymous ballots
Yeah, who
kind of
knows if that
things.
was true? It could have been fabricated. I don't know, but
I
at the
don't.
same time, if it wasn't, I wouldn't be surprised.
At any rate, I hope that TCM finds a home
Yeah.
somewhere, or that Warner Brothers wakes up and realizes
Let's
that this is important and we need to take care of
Let
this.
let's hope that emergency call that apparently occurred with Zaslav from who is it? Spielberg,
Oh, the
Scorsese, and
director's
PTA.
Avengers.
Yeah, the
Yes.
directors Avengers. Yeah. Let's hope they talk
Yeah.
some sense into him.
Yeah, Scorsese, Spielberg, and PTA, I believe
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
That's the Avengers movie that I'm really looking forward to,
My
whenever that comes out.
gosh. Oh man, me too.